Sorry, my bad. My bad. Fresh out the shower. I'm gonna get myself together. I'm gonna need about an hour. Yeah. But let's get to it, man. Bob Arum says top rank didn't carry Terence Crawford to the biggest paydays, and he regretted it. I mean, at the end of the day, he continued to speak bad about him. We're gonna get to the exact quote of what he said. You can't be speaking bad about people respectfully and expect them to stay and be happy. He spoke bad about Terence. He spoke bad about Shakur. And, you know, he expected them to hang around. And it doesn't work that way. You know, and a lot of these people who have issues with black people, they show it in so many different ways. And a lot of times it's a form of jealousy. It's not in the form of flattery. It's a form of jealousy. It's a form of, you know, little undertone, underblows, and, you know, or shout out overtly. Bob Arum can overtly do what he do and say what he say. Because he's in the position of power and he got money. And, you know, even before he was older, what was the fighter he told him? Was it Razor Ruddock or Ray Mercer? They was about to fight Tommy Morrison and they was the champion. And when the fighter asked him, I can't remember, I think it was Ray Mercer. Somebody correct me in the comment section. He was like, well, why do Tommy Morrison make more money than me and I'm the champion? He said, because he white. You know, he white. And he said, the fighter said he respected him for his transparency and his honesty about it. But Arum on Crawford, the fact that we didn't carry him over to the goal line, that's unfortunate for us, but it is what it is. That showbiz. Of course, I'm genuinely happy for him because we're largely responsible for success. He was a non-entity when he started with us. At the end of the day, honestly, he was being suppressed. And it's exactly what the American system does. The American system, I say it all the time, it doesn't exploit its biggest and its brightest because it doesn't want people to wake up. It doesn't want people to have liberation. They want people to stay asleep. They want people to succumb to, you know, what they want. Like I said, if you see the men that run this country, they're weak men, you know, but that's another story for another day, right? And at the end of the day, you didn't want to carry him across the goal line. You talked about how much money you lost on him. You talked bad about him. You got mad because he didn't want to do interviews. And eventually he opened up and started doing interviews and understood what you said from a position of marketing. Doing the interviews is marketing, but also it's much more than that. You know, sponsorships, branding, marketing. And you can see, you look at this Boots and this Xander fight. The marketing is atrocious for this fight. They're not even pushing this fight. You know, but, you know, it takes money to make money. But, you know, largely, let's see if we can get the full tweet. 1 second. But largely to it is, you know, I know for a fact that, so the original tweet said, here's my conversation with Bob Arum, why many believe Bud left some meat on the bone of his career by calling it quit at 38. Long-time promoter Bob Arum counters that he retired at the perfect crescendo. So, crescendo, excuse me. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's no perfect. I can't even say it, bro. In reality, in the moment is no perfect time to retire. Let me say that. But in hindsight, when you look at it, oh damn, I should retire right then, or I should have did this, I should have did. In hindsight, like I said before, you gotta know when to stop. And when you're a slave to get money, you don't know when to stop. And that's when you see people get greedy, people start reaching, people start compromising themselves. That's kind of when you start to see it, bro. Like when people start reaching, they start compromising themselves. It's for the greed of money, you know. At some point, it's good to have an abundance mindset, but you got to be able to have a cap on that mindset. You have to have a cap on that mindset. But Bob Arum applauds Terence Crawford's. Hold on real quick. Okay, I don't know what's going on here. Okay, so it's just the way it goes. Crawford's for retiring on top. He said, why shouldn't he have retired? Boxing is a dangerous sport, Arum says. He said he's accomplished. Let me see, make sure I can see this. My bad. There we go. He's accomplished everything and made more money, particularly in the last few fights, than he ever imagined. He lives in Nebraska and has Warren Buffett as a financial advisor, so he put away a lot of money. Why should he subject himself to all that work preparing for a fight and maybe getting hurt? You saw it with Marvin Hagler, who rolled off into sunset as well when he could have made a lot more money. Now, the thing about Marvin Hagler is he felt like he was robbed. He felt like he was always disrespected by the business of boxing, but he made a lot of money fighting Sugar Ray Leonard, and he started to make a lot of money. So the fact that he didn't carry him over to goal, okay, read that part. So you're right. People, they really want to bring him back to rob him. My thing is this: 50-0 or being undefeated. That's cool. There's no issue with that. But usually when you start talking about 50-0, it's a heavyweight record, and Mayweather has some type of vendetta against. He had a small man complex towards bigger guys and heavyweights. He would always going, I took heavyweights off of HBO. Nah, nigga, the Klitschko's did because they were so boring and they were so much bigger and dominant than everybody else. And that's kind of was the envision or the prevision of the Bridgerweight title, or creating a super heavyweight title. That's why they did Bridgerweight. It was pretty much them. So, in large part, for them, they fumbled, and that's why they had no real fighter to sell to other networks for them to fully invest. TNT, why fully invest with y'all? You don't have the top fighter. Y'all don't have any bargaining chips. Xander wasn't enough. Keyshawn, but they had the bargaining chips. They had Crawford and Shakur Stevenson. You mix that with Xander, you mix that with Keyshawn Davis, then you can sell that package. You mix that with an occasional new UI fight. Now you can sell that package to a TV company and they'll be willing to buy it. But if all these entities work together, instead of trying to get exclusive deals, because if you get exclusive deals, okay, why don't y'all work together to maximize the TV dates? They won't do that because, your fighter might be my fighter. It might be over. So if they all work together, they could corner the market, but it's too late. A lot of their fighters then aged out. And like I said, with Bob, this was a fumble. Because the minute Crawford and Shakur left, ESPN was pretty much ready to pull out without the rubber. And then they gone. That was your 2 TV rating tickets. And then you look at it, and then nobody else wanted to fuck with you. And the zone was like, well, Paramount is going ham. So we got to do something to counter what Paramount doing. And there you have it. There you have it. There you have it. So yeah, he fumbled. He fumbled that. Speaking bad about him or losing, but never talk about how he lost money on Lomachenko and a lot of them other fighters. And that was a lot of people's issue with Bob. His racism always showed. But then, like I said before, people act like it's a difference between Bob, Dana, Eddie Hearn, Al Heyman. Ain't no difference. They here to make money off these guys. They here, they ain't your friend. They not an ally. This is a business relationship where they're going to take more than what they should be taking, and that's business. So you get in a position to break these motherfuckers, it ain't no discounts. When you get in a position to break these people, you got to break them. When it's your time to cash in, you got to break them. You got to cash in. You got to get the best deal possible. Because they ain't trying to catch you. They not trying to give you more. They trying to give you as less as possible. So, but you got to be able to understand that. And of course he got regret because losing Crawford, it made Top Rank, not have a TV deal. That's how if they could still Crawford was able to be a part of the Canelo fight, and they was able to be a part of the Errol Spence fight and stuff like that and be able to work that out. They would probably got read up with ESPN. Kept Shakur Stevenson. They would have been able to re up with ESPN. But, at the end of the day, the system, everybody was hating on Crawford, speaking bad about Crawford when he was coming up, when he came up, when he won titles, when he was undisputed, when he had his big win. They was all talking shit. To the bitter end, they was talking shit about Terence Crawford. To the bitter end. Think about that for a minute. To the bitter end, they talk shit about this man. It's crazy, right? And, instead of uplifting him and getting behind him. And if they did, it would have flooded the sport with money, and everybody would have money, and it would be no Zuffa. But hit the link in the description. Say find me everywhere. Find me on X, Facebook, Kick, Twitch, Instagram, Spotify, Anchor, Cash App, Venmo, PayPal. Appreciate the love and support. Peace.